Vertical Media proudly presents Stellar Shock. An immersive audiobook podcast experience from the visionary storytellers at Vertical Media. Book 1, Embers of Rebellion.
Chapter 2, Prospectus. The boys walked into Tuitoma with shirts stuck to their backs and mud caked up to their knees. Sunlight slanted through scattered palms, cutting wide, hot stripes across the foot-worn path. The gate, flanked by two upright beams set deep in the ground, marked the border between more and less safety. Above stretched a wood sign, split and battered at the corners, with Tuitoma gouged across it in thick, chopped-out letters that ran from one edge to the other. Sarah kept his hands stuffed in his pockets, feeling the weight of each stone and bit of string he'd collected on the walk, counting out old routines in sync with each step. Two gatekeepers leaned against one of the posts. One chewed on a reed, lips pursed tight, squinted eyes tracking the five boys. The other spat into the dust, wiped his mouth, then tipped his head back, as if he expected something dangerous coming in after them. The men wore wraps at the waist and old knives strapped across their chests. Their arms were knotted with muscle, shoulders roped, faces marked by sun scars and lines that were probably older than Sarah could guess. Baloo snorted as they passed. "Yeah, you watch your village, old man," he muttered, not quite under his breath. Viti grinned at his friend. "Maybe he's only watching your ugly face, not the rest of us." Lavu let out a small laugh and kept his eyes forward, brushing sweat from his temple. Nobody else said anything until the guards' voices faded, replaced by the smolder and crackle of the village. Rows of thatched huts lined the road, a collection of bundles, each shaped like a sideways bowl, topped with green and brown and moss at the bones. Near each, a patchwork fence looped rough rectangles of ground, some garden, some storage, all crisscrossed by footprints and the scratch marks of lean village dogs. Faint voices drifted from within the doorways, but almost no one stood outside. The heat had driven most folks in for dusk. Tuitoma at this hour felt held in the palm of someone's hand, too quiet, as though the village listened for a threat behind each bird call. Past the entrance, 3 houses stood a little apart from the others. Their doors faced the path square, wider and better built than most, not because their owners deserved more, but because custom said the families near the gate ought to afford space for visiting or warning. Baloo's house sat first, largest, its walls clotted with mud and palm stem, patched in places by fresh river clay, still dark from the morning. A split-rail bench ran along the wall under the single faded window. Viti's house followed 3 steps away. Its roof bulged at the center, but sagged on the left. His mother called it a sleepy roof, though anyone who stood in the kitchen during a rainstorm left with a wet shoulder. The garden beside the house grew thick with herbs and onions, their tops poking through a mat of weeds, heavy with bugs. A half-finished fishing net hung over a line between 2 fence posts, a day's work only half done. Lavu lived in the 3rd house, a long rectangle with a wide porch. 2 small pairs of sandals sat by the door, abandoned by younger siblings. Lavu's father, Canulo, often stood on this porch at night, arms folded, keeping a close watch on the paths leading out toward the forest. The 5 paused as they passed Baloo's gate. He swung it open with one heel and greeted a small black dog that darted out to nose at his legs. "This one's smarter than all you put together," he bragged. "Learned to piss outside in just 1 day." Viti rolled his eyes and flicked a clump of dirt at Baloo, hitting the boy's calf. "Hope he pisses in your bed next, Captain." Sir let the insults roll along. He watched Roland, who looked small beside Baloo, smaller even with dust streaked on his nose, face hidden mostly behind a mop of tangled hair. Roland slipped his hands to the long side pocket of his shorts and pressed his back against Sir, a silent signal to keep moving. When Balu and Lavu reached their front steps, they turned, each calling a quick, fast goodbye, almost in unison. "See you in the morning. Don't let the dog bite you." Lavu's voice trailed off into his house. Balu whistled at the black dog again, and then vanished after it, leaving only the slap of the gate and a scraping sound. Viti waited a moment, then lifted his chin. "Guess I'll see you idiots at sunrise. Unless your mom lets you sleep in, Roland." "Should wake me with the broom," Roland said, uncertain. "See you, Viti." Viti gave Sarah a half nod, eyes squinting again, and slipped off toward his porch, wet sandals in one hand, whistling low. Roland and Sarah headed deeper into Tuitoma, boots bumping small stones. The main footpath thickened wider here, more rutted, with grooves worn deep by rain and the drift of footsteps. Houses on either side sprouted close together, their thatching ragged along the edges. A few cats watched from low platforms, eyes narrowed, tails twitching slow. They passed the public well, its rope trailing wet circles over the beam. The wooden bucket perched by the edge, beads of water cooling the dirt beneath. A pale child crouched nearby, gathering up kindling. She saw the boys, lifted her chin, and darted inside the nearest house, her footfalls quick and quiet. Between the well and the elders' hall, wide bowls cradled smouldering coals from midday's cookfires. The air here thickened with a mix of wood smoke, boiled greens, and the sharp tang of river fish. Smells clung to the low beams. The communal hall stood dead ahead, bigger than any house in Tuitoma, but only by width, not height. Its sides bruised by age, reinforced by knotty bamboo driven into hard-packed mud. The sloping roof ran long, almost hitting the ground at the sides. At the entry, thick doors of oak ran from ground to over a man's head. A carving above the door showed 4 coiled animals, each one reposing on a stone bird, snake, frog, and boar, each with mouths wide and empty eyes. Outside the hall, a deep set of muddy boot prints crisscrossed the steps. The left door here always stuck. Some villager had hung a battered bell just above, but it only rang for market days or funerals. Roland stopped. He rocked on his heels. "They started early tonight," he whispered. The sound coming from inside the hall reached them. Low voices stabbing at each other, a deep rumble like a storm working itself up but not yet blowing. Every few moments a voice rose, battered up against the closed doors, then bled back into the undertone. Sir motioned to Roland, placed a finger to his lips, and drew the other boy along the wall's shadow toward the back. The side of the communal hall smelled of old dirt, bamboo, and old soup. Grass clutched at cracks in the packed earth. 2 old chunks of brick rested by the foundation remnants from elsewhere, hauled here ages ago for reasons even Ward probably wouldn't remember. Around this side, sunlight lost its way, turned slow and muddy, clinging to corners. Roland crouched near a pile of broken roofing, keeping flat. Sarah moved slow, picking his spots, watching for anything that might draw unwanted attention. A shadow shifting, a rat diving beneath the eaves, the scrape of footsteps from the alley behind them. The bamboo lattice on the wall warped in 2 places, and there Sarah saw it. A slit not wider than his thumb, running horizontal, streaked by pale light. He bent his ear to the crack, at first muffled voices, an anxious hum and the measured thunk of wood on wood, maybe a staff tapping for attention. Then he leaned forward to press his right eye against the edge, squinting through at the inside. The hall inside opened wide, bigger than even the harvest markets. The air shimmered from the glow of 6 wall torches bracketed up high. Straw mats ran along both sides of the table that stretched down the center. A collection of elders packed the benches. The tallest lifted a mug, hand trembling slow, his voice lost in the tilt of his head. At the head, half turned from the others, sat Ward Sarrafin. His beard had gone nearly white, streaked through with yellow smoke stains. He wore a patched robe, threadbare at both elbows. Sir watched him scratch at his jaw with a finger thickened by old breaks and scars. Ward's eyes looked elsewhere, Not bored, not tired, just gone, like he listened to a voice only he could hear. The mug sat untouched in front of him. The men around him held theirs higher, cups pulsing with every wave of their hands. The Hodea Cluvier hammered his fist against the table. That poor excuse of a god has doomed his entire kingdom. His words flung across the table, lips shredded by nerves. He sat broad-shouldered and balding, with the same streak of angry blue eyes Sir saw in Viti. Kalju Kochakipi shifted, crammed in one of the benches, folding his arms across a barrel chest. His voice hung heavy and deep. But what if it's more? Why would he do? The words muffled at the last, trampled by the next elder's shout. Box Zook smashed his hand flat on the planks. He's going to come here, I just know it. His voice rose clear and sharp, cutting through the mess. Box's nose hooked right, shattered once as a boy in a village fight. His skin shone with sweat. Lavu Kanula jabbed his foot under the table, catching Ward in the shin. Ward blinked and braced himself as if expecting a larger blow, then whipped his hand up, knuckles split from work, never quite healed right. Ward's voice rumbled across the walls. The elders went still, even the flame on the torch nearest Ser stilled for a heartbeat, shrinking back from the command in Sarrafin's tone. "Friends," Ward said, the word like a slap. "Listen." The men froze and watched him. Ser caught Roland at his side, breathing quietly. Ward pressed on. His words clipped, low and sure. "We don't know if today's the day or if tomorrow's the day. We'll know when the flame and fire are before us, and not a day before. Together we've built this place. We fought for years. Years most here want to forget. The jungles tried to eat us, and so did the tribes that came before. We fought the river for fish, and then for gold, then for peace. But we never fought against destiny. We never fought against Io. She guides us. We hold fast to her." Ok Zuck slammed a fist again. "We can't just stand by. That asshole in Mount Vuur, he's bringing the war right at our door." The ward waved him down. "There have been other wars, Zuck. None have come for us. Not one broke through these gates. Dialik Batwa, you should start by kidnapping a god's daughter," Ux shouted. Around him a murmur built again. Canulo, Lava's father, tightened his fingers on the lip of the table. "I spoke with the minstrels when they arrived. They carried the news. Tandros's injustice in Cornelia. The keepers sending his basalt thugs everywhere." Hodea cut in, half out of breath. "They're recruiting everyone, every able man." The minstrels said, "Those who refuse." His voice faltered. He didn't finish. Ward lifted his voice. "Enough! If a crimson army emerges, it will die with the tide. We'll see what story Nevera wants to tell, and we'll play our part." Seer leaned back from the slit, every muscle in his face tensed. Lamps inside the hall burned steady, but outside the blue and gold light faded. An extra shadow stretched across Roran's feet, thrown from the torches inside, trembling against the broken bamboo. Roland breathed slow, eyes wide, looking to Sir for a cue. Sir tried to keep his voice light. "The elders know what they're doing," he muttered. Roland hunched his shoulders. "You sure?" "Never sure," Sir said. "But they know what needs to be done. Come on." They slid away from the back of the communal hall, dust and grass sticking to knees. The hush outside cracked only by the chorus of frogs and crickets working up over the night. Roland followed Sir, quick-footed, glancing behind with every fourth step. They crossed back through the Blue Dock side street. Sir scanned left and right, past drowsy cats, a lone basket hanging from a nail, the slow buzz of a mosquito over his arm. In front of Roland's house, the window shone with thin gold light. Inside, a female shape drifted by the hearth, hands at work over a chopping board. The smell of stew and wood smoke drifted out. Sir nodded to Roland. "Get some rest. I'll see you in the morning." Roland hesitated. "You think they'll keep us here? Even if there's war?" The Rusa shrugged. Nobody leaves unless Ward says so. Roland bit the inside of his cheek, pushed the door open, and stepped inside. The door closed with a whine. Joe walked off, the path dipping under fresh moonlight. His own house lay past the last line of almonds, and rivergum, low fence of half-sunk logs, porch propped by stones. No light burned in the window. He stepped inside to near darkness, the sound of dogs barking from 2 houses over, the echo of the elders' voices, chased out by stillness. He set his hand on the table, feeling his way, the surface rough in spots, pitted where food had burned or been carved away by accident. He found the candle by touch, a stub with 3 burned wicks and the box of matches resting in a shallow bowl. The first strike fizzled. He tried again, gripping the match until it flared, then fed it to the candle. Light spilled wide and sudden, filling the hut with long stuttering shadows. 2 rooms, main, Ward's, his. The main room doubled for everything. A stacked shelf with yesterday's bread, a small rack with blades hung across the mantel, and 2 buckets left to catch roof leaks by the corner near the door. Sear glanced up. The black sword hung above the mantel, not touched, not moved for... He lost count. He laid the candle down on the center table. From the pantry, he drew out a half-empty jar of beans, a sack of salt, and limp greens wrapped in old cloth. He put the soup pot over the flames, fed it split kindling, and tipped water from the bucket. The pot hissed, flaring with a sour heat. He cut up greens, their smell rising sharp above the salt. He ate soon after, spooning broth into his mouth. It burned at his lip. The soup filled only a scrape of hunger. He wiped the bowl, set another portion aside for Ward, and cleaned the pot. The routine quieted his mind, letting the details sink into the space the day's noise left behind. Ward kicked open the door an hour after dark. The hinges squealed. His shoulders filled the frame. He paused there, scuffing his feet on the raised step as if scraping mud from old habits he couldn't break. He let out a single cough, thick, rooty, from deep in his chest. Sayre stood near the hearth, back to the fire. He didn't look up at first. The soup sat waiting on the table. Ward hung his staff by the door, pulled off his belt and let it drop to the floor. The man's eyes looked dry, ringed by sleepless nights and the weight of many years. He grabbed for the bowl and spoon. The soup had gone cold. But Ward ate quick, swallowing in rough slurps, not tasting, jaw working automatic. Sayre steadied his hands on the rim of the table. Ward finished half the bowl before speaking, fixing his eyes on the rim instead of his nephew. "How was the elders' meeting?" Sayre asked. His own words sounded weak to him, smaller than he'd planned. Ward barely raised an eyebrow. He rolled a piece of bean between his teeth, chewed, swallowed. "And how would you know about that?" "It wasn't hard to hear the commotion from the road," Sayre said, voice even. Ward snorted, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "Don't worry about it. Not your time. Not yet." The silence pressed in. Fire popped and settled. Ward drained the rest of his soup, scraping the bowl. Grease shined on his bottom lip, caught the light. "Besides, don't you have your meditation?" Ward's tone cut the subject off. There. Knew better than to push. He nodded, walked to the center of the room, and dropped onto the hard-packed earth. He sat cross-legged, hands resting on knobby knees, eyes half-closed. Ward's chair creaked as he leaned back. Sev drew a slow breath and let it go. Outside, a wind moved through the trees, making the roof creak, pressing loose thatch into old leaks. The candle flickered, painting wavering stripes across the wood. Sayre fell inward fast practice, not accident. He found the silent road in his head by following edge to edge, corner to corner, no shortcut, just like Ward had shown him. Years ago. "Io is everything," Ward had said then, his hand rough on Sir's scalp, dragging him into seated posture. The old man's voice growled in Sir's ear, smoke and old river mud in every word. "Io is what ravels the draw. It gives us canter. It's with Io that we stay alive. There, sitting matched, in that old memory wards, legs folded in a squat. Sarah's smaller frame, twitchy at first, then rigid as a tree limb. Ward spoke in a low rhythm. Sarah gripped every word, afraid a wrong question would bring out the blows instead. "But what is Io?" Sarah had asked, wide-eyed, fingers digging tracks into the mat. "The world's a pyramid," Ward said, slow drawl. He laid a thick fingertip on the floor. "Io is the tip, right? Holds all the canted together. That's your magic, boy. Underneath is earth, water, fire, wind. You're born with one under your tongue, and Io keeps the rest from falling apart." Sir squinted. "And with Io we use magic." "Right. The keepers, the real ones, they keep the balance. Without them, no Io, no magic, none of us." Ward's voice dropped. "That's how it is. Don't get it twisted." Thea didn't let up. "Who controls Io?" "No one here," Ward replied. In his face, the lesson closed up again. Sarah felt it in the air, saw Ward's lip curl. "But your magic," Sarah pushed. "What's yours? It's supposed to run in families." Ward's mouth pulled flat. "None of your business," he said. His hand twitched on his knee, nails bit scarred skin. The memory clung, that sense of danger. "But Sarah pressed, I probably have the same, don't I?" Ward's eyes narrowed. "I had a Kanta, a gift. She took it, left me nothing but this." His voice glinted with hate. "Figure out your element, then you might mean something." His gaze turned brutal, burned. "Right now, you're nothing." Sarah's 10-year-old mouth spat the only defense he had. "I still have time. Maybe I'll be worth something to this place. More than you'll ever be." The crack of Ward's hand across Sarah's face came quick, no warning. The hit bent Sarah backward, cheek ringing, sharp taste in his mouth, eyes watering. He stumbled, hit the wall, dropped to one knee. Blood started a sticky line down his temple. "You don't speak like that in my home!" Ward's rage echoed through the room. Sarah looked up, defiant and shaking. Ward grabbed 2 practice swords from the rack. He tossed one, making it land hard at Sarah's feet. "Pick it up, now." Sarah grabbed the sword with both hands. Its heft stung his split palm. Ward took the other. Without a word, he swung a wide arc Sarah dodged on instinct, dropping low, feeling the wind from the blade above his head. Ward brought the sword down again, aiming for the right. Sarah scrambled, then managed an awkward block, arms trembling from the impact. They sparred, in violent bursts. Ward's style brute and practiced. Each blow meant to batter, to teach, to bruise. Sarah backed away, absorbed, blocked, swung weak counterstrikes that Ward battered down with one hand. Ward feinted left, then drove the blade in a slash to Sarah's waist. Sarah jumped back, stumbling, felt the edge barely graze his shirt. His shoulder knocked the rack. Above the mantle, the black sword, gleaming dark and wrong, hung above them both. Sarah's breath stuck. Ward kept himself in front of the sword, never letting Sarah near it. His face twisted sweat over his temples, hair wild. Suddenly, a white flash tore across the room. Sarah couldn't say if it was pain or terror, and Ward dropped. He hit the dirt, sucking ragged air, face pressed to the floor. Sarah dropped his sword at the scream, the noise clawing at his insides. He ran to Ward, but the old man waved him off, crawling backwards, pressing himself against the nearest pillow. Caution in every eye flick toward both Sarah and the sword. Ward wheezed, voice shaking. That world of magic and elements stayed behind Sarah's eyes long after. He sat on the dirt, heart thrumming, watching his uncle nurse wounds both new and old. Now, in the present, Sarah opened his eyes. The fire's light fixed the black sword long, narrow, black as river mud after flood season. The leather grip looked too well made for the village. Foreign letters shone below the wrappings, weaving in patterns that shifted as the light touched them. Sarah felt those marks crawl through his mind. meaning brushing up against understanding, then sliding away. The sword's blade bore the outline of a woman, silver-etched, straight-backed, young, hair tied severe, features neat and unreadable. Her tunic flowed the length of the blade and seemed alive in the candlelight. The detail locked Ser's gaze to the sword's middle, then to the leather hilt, letters shifting under his stare. Ser studied the sword often. He couldn't describe what it made him feel. No story in the village, no folk tale among tribe or traveller told of anything quite like it. The blade pulled at him, not curiosity, but something harsher, as if the thing didn't want an owner and would rather see itself locked away forever. Ward pushed the candle across the table and lit his pipe. The first puff filled the air with sour, sharp smoke. Ward watched it flow out, tracking it past the open window. Ser sucked in the smell. It belonged in the hut, part of the routine of night. Ward returned the candle to its usual spot. The flame's glow moved along the sword, as if running up the etched woman's dress, trailing up her legs and over her midsection, glinting at her eyes. Ser held his breath as the light seemed to pause. Her gaze flicked up just for a second, from the hilt to his own eyes. He jumped. The stool scraped on the earthen floor. Ser blinked fast, forcing himself to look again. The etching had gone still. The woman's eyes settled, pointing away, motionless in steel and silver. The hut lay quiet. The only sound Ward tapping the pipe against the rim of the table, emptying old tobacco onto a chipped plate. The man's eyes lost, fixed somewhere above Ser's head, his mouth pulled into a flat, bitter line. Ser reached for the soup pot, intending to scrape it out, make tomorrow's meal easier. His hands shook as he filled the bowl with water, and he tried not to look back at the sword. Outside, wind battered the thatch. A child's voice yelped nearby, shattered by an argument and silenced just as quickly. From past Canulo's house, a dog started bark, short and sharp, urgent. Ward didn't move. He stared at the empty pipe bowl, lost in headaches that never left. Ser's knees ached from sitting, but he didn't rise. He waited, counting. Breath held. Hands splayed across his knees as he forced his gaze away from the sword, away from Ward, into the half-light, where no one asked anything of anyone. Ser scraped the rest of the pot, saved what little he could for the morning, and wiped his hands against his pants. The heat from the dying fire clung to his elbows. The hut felt too small, the ceiling low and spiderwebbed above his head. Ward didn't speak. He sat back, watching the table, jaw set, every part of his body claiming more space than it needed. Ser blew out the candle, letting darkness eat the corners. He moved stiff to his room. His own space was barely wide enough for a rolled mat and a crate pressed against the wall. From the crack below the door, the orange flicker of embers marked the line between his world and Ward's. In the dark, every sound snapped clear. Something scrabbling across the roof, Ward's cough, a distant voice from deep in the village. He stretched on the mat and watched the shadows move. His fingers closed around the lip of the crate, feeling the rough wood, old splinters. He counted every pulse in his wrist until the number grew unsteady. Sleep didn't come. Not at first. Just a slow drift in and out, the night crawling on. He saw corners of old dreams, river mud rich and black, Balu laughing with his mouth full, Roller kneeling beside a burst water pipe, Ward's arm as it lifted, striking, the face on the sword's blade turning to look at him. In the half-dream, he reached for the sword, but never grabbed it. The metal bit cold and sharp, shocking him awake. He didn't know when he finally slept. Only that morning arrived too early and too loud. Every sound outside rang closer than it should. A woman's voice shouted for her child. A stick snapped near the goat's lean-to. Wet laundry slapped a stone 3 houses away. Ward moved through the main room with slow wrecking steps, boots dragging, ignoring Sir. Dressed in yesterday's shirt and the freshest shorts left on his crate. He tied the cord twice, working the knot until it held under his fingers. When he stepped into the common room, Ward had already unlatched the door. Bright sun knifed in, slashing across the table. Ward stopped, hand on the latch. "Do what needs doing. Come back for supper." Voice flat, final. He didn't even turn. Then he was out the door, the screen slamming shut, his boots striking dirt. Sear listened to the rhythms of the house after he left. He couldn't say if that was Ward's way of showing trust, or if the man was just tired of having a boy under his roof. He found himself alone in the hut's pale silence. The training swords hung above the cold ashes of last night's fire. The black sword looked the same, no trace of yesterday's nightmare in its curve, no hint of movement in the metal woman's eyes. Zerwella walked out, the sun pressed down on his shoulders the moment he stepped from shadow onto the dirt path. The village sprawled out as it always did, families already working. Lavu's mother hauled a basket of greens past Balu's house. Canulo's two youngest ran screaming after the black dog, throwing sticks, calling each other liars. The air stank of wet leaves and last night's latrines. He walked toward the well. Roland already knelt beside it, tying a thin strip of cloth to a chunk of wood. His face looked pinched, hands moving quick, feet braced wide. Sir approached without calling out. He crouched next to his friend, watched him fit the chunk into a cradle made from vine. Roland didn't look up. Couldn't sleep. He worked the knot, lips pressed white. Sear shifted on his haunches. "Me neither. Ward and the others, they're getting ready for something." "I heard them when I went for water," Roland said. "Lavu's father was there. He said they might send the young ones to the terraces if trouble comes." Sear bit the inside of his cheek. "Too many people in the jungle already, not safe anywhere else." Roland dropped the wood, let it thump on the dirt. "Maybe we should hide. You know if they come for us." Sir glanced sideways, made sure nobody stood close. "We go. Ward follows. Or worse, he lets them take us. Either way, we lose." A child ran past barefoot, hair wild, holding a stick as if it were a sword. She slashed at an invisible enemy with wild yells before vanishing down the lane. Zur let out a breath. He watched the sun catch on the peak of the communal hall roof, turning the bamboo slats pale and gold. The noise inside was gone now. Only 3 of the elders stood near the front, heads bent close. Hodea's big hands sliced the air as he talked. Canulo nodded, hard, after every other sentence. Oak Zook perched on the steps, wind tugging at his sleeves, face set against the day. Roland finished his rapping, sat back, eyes following Says. "Do you think we'll have to fight?" His voice barely louder than the hum of bees circling the old fig tree. Sir twisted a piece of grass between his fingers until it snapped. He hesitated, then threw the stem aside. "If Ward put a sword in my hand, I'll use it, but I'm not fighting for that old bastard, or for his stories." Roland's mouth curled down, but he only nodded. His hands shook once, then settled. The door to Lavu's house banged open. Lavu stepped out, face red, clothes askew, his mother's voice trailing after him, half warning, half prayer. He stomped down the path, head low, spotted the other 2, and gave a brief nod. "Lau's looking for you," Lavu muttered. "Said you owe him a fishing net." Ser shrugged. "I owe him nothing." Lavu scratched his chin, scuffed the dirt with his heel. "You see the strangers last night. Minstrels gone before dawn. Left with Canulo's old boots and half a sack of grain." "Devilly leave anything else?" Roland asked. Lavu's eyes shifted back toward the communal hall. "Only bad news. Said a tribe 3 valleys south went missing. Houses burned. No signs left but ash." Ser felt the old cold collect in his backbone. He didn't speak. A light wind poked at the leaves above their heads, scattering dry blades underfoot. Bailu appeared from up the lane, carrying a coil of rope over one shoulder, a broken oar in the other. He looked flushed, hair dark with sweat. He gave the rope a quick snap, making dust jump. "You hear?" Balu called, voice rasping loud enough to draw a hard glance from Oksuk up at the hall. "There's a boat on the river again. Outsiders. Villagers said the mark on the sail looked red, not blue. Not ours." Roland bristled. Sir pushed to his feet, fists clenching. Balu grinned, all teeth and no joy. Ward sent scouts, said if anyone looked like they could swing a blade, bring them to him. Guess what, sir? He told Canulo your name first. Sir patted to the dust, voice flat. "Ward can wait. If that boat comes close, I'll see for myself." Nobody laughed. The sun crept higher. Lavu pulled at the sleeve of his shirt, eyes darting toward the trees. Roland stood, brushing his knees, mouth set. A horn sounded from east of the far field. Its throat-deep note rolled through the village, sending birds up in flocks from the rooftops. Around them, old men called to wives, mothers clapped children to their sides, goats pulled at their tethers and brayed. Seer looked at Roland, saw his hands shaking again, and stepped forward first, boots gritting on the packed earth. The road sloped toward the river, only thin brush and a scatter of low trees between the village and the water's edge. He didn't slow as he walked, the others falling in at his side, not speaking, shoulders set for whatever he found at the bottom of the path. The river cut a thick line just beyond Tuitoma Brown, slow, alive with the spit and whisper of tiny waves. The far side was nothing but reeds and low banks. The sun flashed hard off the surface, blinding whenever the wind shifted. Downstream, a keel-shaped boat drifted sideways out of a patch of shade. 3 men visible, 2 rowing, one standing in back holding a staff topped with red cloth. Sayre stopped at the tree line, ducking behind a trunk. The others followed, dropping to their haunches in the undergrowth. Flies hovered near their ears. Nobody spoke. They watched the boat work its way closer, now aiming for the shallow spit 30 yards east of the dock. Balu crouched low, picked up a stone, rolled it in his palm, knuckles white. "They're flying a blood rag," he said. "Not a fisherman's colour." Roland's breath caught. "Should we run back?" "No point now," Lavu muttered. "If they want trouble, they're already here." The standing man barked out words. None of the boys could catch the language, only the sound, flat, guttural, a string of orders. The 2 rowers shoved the oars deep, spinning the hull slow until the bow kissed mud. The man with the staff stepped off, planted his foot ankle deep, and didn't flinch. He stood very still, waiting. Behind the group, a scrape and heavy wheeze announced Oksuk. Walking faster than his age implied, he carried a long stick, runes scratched along one end. "Stay down," he muttered. "Watch everything." Ok let his body fill the space between the kids and the strangers. His stance slouched from a lifetime scraping wind and sand from his eyes and teeth, but his hands never shook. He waved the boys further back, then shouted toward the water. "Nana hal! Nana! Village of Tuitoma! What trade? What word? What need?" The man on the bank lifted his staff. He spoke again, his tongue still clipped and rough. One of the older river roots, maybe. His face was narrow, beard cut short, from a tribe Sayre didn't recognize. Ukzuk leaned on his stick, eyebrows lowered beneath the shadow of a palm leaf. "Most of these floaters come for food, maybe shelter," he said, low to the boys. "But not with red. Red means call to arms always, or worse." Sayre spat to one side. "Ward will want them watched." Uk nodded once. "Let him come. Let them feel old eyes on their backs." Balu tensed beside Sayre, ready for flight or fight. Roland moved back, careful, quiet step after step, until he stood half in shadow. The man on the riverbank stuck the staff deep into mud, then lifted a sack from the prow and slung it over his chest. He waited as if daring someone to challenge him. The pair on the oars pulled the hull closer, their bodies ropey with scars and sunburn. From the village lane, more elders appeared. Hodea, Pluvia, and Canulo, each with a walking stick, moved fast for men their age. They never took eyes off the boat. Canulo called, "No weapons in hand past the waterline. You want talk, you show both hands clear." The visitor shrugged, lifted both hands, open palms. A crooked ring glinted on one finger. Without further talk, he marched up the little path, leaving thick prints in the muck. He waited for the elders to close the distance. Sir shifted, sliding a stick from the ground and holding it across his knees, fingering the bark. Roland's knuckles matched his face, bloodless. Ward appeared then, not hurrying, but not dragging either. He didn't have a staff. Dust clung to his ankles and the hair on his arms, grey and black together. He scanned every movement before lowering his chin a notch and facing the strangers. No one spoke for account. The air packed itself tight, leaves trembled under the morning heat. Finally, Ward stepped into view and said, "You have a name, traveller? Or are you here to send a message?" The stranger spoke, his words deliberate, voice carrying over the river's hiss. "Basalt, I speak for those at Mount Vuur. I carry the keeper's command." His hands stayed up, slow to move. Ward nodded once. "Say it." Basalt tilted his chin. "The tribes of the valley are called to rise. Every blade, every strong back, every oath. There is theft against the gods. There will be justice for it. We gather men willing or not." Hodea spit on the ground at the man's feet. "You want Tuitoma. You'll bleed to take it." Bessel didn't blink. "Our quarrel isn't with small villages, not unless the keeper decides it is." Ward kept his stare flat. "We have farms, river nets, nothing for an army." The man let his eyes slide across Ward's, then the men behind him, then over the huts stacked near the riverbank. "There are sons here. We need sons, and men who remember steel." Canulo said, "Most who remember steel keep old wounds. You'll see faster with trade." The visitor shook his head. "No trade. We take or you give." The hush spread. Oakzuk's knuckles went white on his stick, but he didn't step forward. Basalt reached into his sack. He pulled out a length of red cloth, tossed it to the ground, and stepped back. "Paint your door if you join. Leave it clean if you refuse. We come back tomorrow. If your answer is wrong, you'll know the fire." He backed up, not looking away from Ward or Canulo, then walked to the river. The two oarsmen shoved hard, pulling the boat off mudbank, drifted out into deeper water. Oak watched, his face tight. No one spoke. The boys never moved, crouched in a thicket. Every noise seemed too loud, every snap of a twig, each swallow of breath. Roland finally let go of his knee, let his hand fall, quiet as he could. Ward turned, never looking their way. His step didn't falter, even as Oakzuk muttered curses under his breath. Sir felt his own hands slick with sweat. Dust stuck to his shoulder blades. Above, birds started singing again, as if the river threat meant nothing. Lavu whispered, "They'll come back, they always do." "No one's joining," Sir said. Ward would rather burn the place himself. Baloo sank lower on his haunches. "People have left for less. My cousin did last winter. Just went into the hills, never said a word." Roland bit his tongue, the tremble leaving his face, but landing in his voice. "If anyone runs, they'll chase us down. The basalt don't forget. Better to face them here," Lavu answered, "if we all stick together." Sarah wiped his palm on his shirt and said nothing. From the top of the ridge, the elders regrouped, heads bent close, the red cloth now dust-stained and lying untouched. The sun kept rising, heath thickening, no words left for comfort. Sir found himself watching the river, the spot where the boat had vanished. He traced the shape of the water, each ripple, each flash of reflected sky, a thread that might tighten into a noose by nightfall. Ser stood. His knees clicked as he straightened, limbs stiff from crouching too long in the undergrowth. His shirt hung damp against his spine, a stripe of mud running from wrist to elbow. He watched the patch of water where the boat had been, eyes unfocused. He heard the others move. Balu grunted as he pushed to his feet. Lavu rolled his shoulder with a dull pop. Roland picked just one careful route through the thorns, face pale. None of the adults glanced their way as the boys crept back up the shallow slope. The elders formed a knot beside the path. Hadea bent to pick up the red cloth, holding it between two fingers like a lizard he'd rather throw, but Canulo barked something, and Hadea dropped it again. Ward didn't break from the circle. He waited, arms folded, head bobbing as each elder spoke his piece. The village behind them bristled. Mothers called tide for children who'd drifted past the fields. The men who'd been tending the cook fires or lashing wood to garden fences set down their tools, squinting downstream with faces hard as bark. The news was already spreading, doors opened, slammed, voices carried the warning in quiet, sharp bursts. Roland wiped his forehead with the heel of his palm. He stared at Ser, forgetting to keep his voice low. "What do we do now? Do you think Ward will call everyone to the hall?" "She'll call everyone soon enough," Ser said. "He never waited long with bad news." He kept his eyes on Ward's back, the set of those battered shoulders. Balu picked up a stick, stripped it clean with his teeth. "If he calls, I'll bet he wants the oldest and strongest at the front, same as always." Lavu spat in the grass. "He'll want every sword drawn, even from the kids. That's what he means about not giving away the village." Ser didn't reply. He brushed his sandals free of grit, then kept moving. He led the others away from the crowd forming near the path, around the chicken coops, over a line ragged with drying fish, behind the oldest huts. They cut through the beds of old river stones, every step forcing the sharp thrush of nerves down a little further. At the edge of Balu's house, they lingered beside the fence. The black dog barked twice, then settled by Ser's foot and nosed his ankle. None of the boys wanted to talk first. Ser dug his socked toe into the packed dirt. "If we run now, we look guilty. If we hide, we get dragged out." "Nobody's running," Roland said, sharp but shaking. "My mother would lock me in the storage hut before she let me run." Balu looked like he might spit, but he didn't. "Doesn't matter if we stay or go, only how hard we put up a fight." Lavu traced a scar on his forearm with his thumb. Eyes narrowed. "Fight who? The basalt? Ward if he comes at us with swords? Or each other?" None of them answered right away. Overhead, the leaves hung wonky and still. The air held tight to the heat, unmoving, waiting. Inside Balu's house, an argument flared up. Voices pinched, a dish clattering, then silence. The black dog shivered, then pressed against Ser's leg for a moment, before trotting to the doorway and laying its head on its paws. Ser looked from face to face. He saw Lavu's jaw tensed, Balu clenching and unclenching his fist, Roland breathing fast but steady. All kids from the same patch, all raised to dig in their heels, all just waiting for somebody to make the call. Ser's stomach grumbled. He'd skipped breakfast, nerves eating the hunger right out of him. Balu's mother passed by the front window, caught his eye, didn't wave. Ser folded his arms. "We should see what Ward wants," Ser said. "If we don't show, he'll send for us anyway." The others nodded. They broke apart, moving as a loose line, heading for the center of Tuitoma. On the walk, they threaded between shell paths, weaving around pots left to soak, whistling to pretend at ease. Villagers watched in silence, old men from stoops, girls bent over buckets, another boy, younger, peering at them through a broken panel in his door. Each face returned their stare. The group didn't speak again until they reached the shadows near the communal hall. Its doors stood cracked open, a warning, an invitation, nothing like before. Wordless, the boys filed inside with heads a little lower. The hall was cooler than the yard, thick with the smell of split wood, old sweat, and 100 forgotten meetings. The benches were already filling up, men and women, backs bowed by work, pressed close along the walls. The elders formed a block in front, Ward at the centre. Ward raised his voice as Sir and the other boys entered. It rang through the space, not shouting, but loud enough to shake off the hush. Tuitoma gathers and no one is missed. You hear me now, not one is missed. He waited for quiet, then for each face to turn in his direction. He gave no comfort with his stare, only the sharp measure of a man who never stopped waiting for trouble to finish its job. We've had visitors, Ward said. The word fell hard, direct as any command. They want to draft every able body. They want what isn't theirs. They want our boys. They want to turn our homes inside out. He let that sink, eyes moving from mothers to brothers to the elders behind him. No shouting now, only stillness. Tomorrow this village chooses, Ward went on. Those who mean to stay prepare. Those who mean to run do so by sundown. You all know my mind. Here's the line. That's all. A murmur started and spread, angry, scared, and tired all at once. Ward didn't bother to silence it. He stood for a count, then stepped away, signal enough that anything left unsaid would be finished outside. Sayer's mouth felt dry. He stared at the slats in the floor, old mud packed between boards. None of the benches felt steady. The boys filtered out with everyone else. In the sudden glare outside, for a moment, everything in the village felt smaller, cramped, caught with nowhere left to go. Sayer fixed his eyes on his own feet and walked toward home. The afternoon dragged on, thick with heat and the buzzing of gnats. Most of the village shuffled through chores without talking. A few collected yams from stony fields, heads down, dirt worked into their sleeves. At the riverbank, older boys pulled tangled gnats from shallow water, eyes always drifting to where the red-sailed boat had vanished. The wordless weight grew heavier. Nothing in the air but the scratch of brooms, the drag of empty buckets, the hard snap of wood splitting beneath a hatchet. Sayer found himself walking the path past Viti's house. The sleepy roof sagged lower than usual, patched now with fresh leaves, and a torn shirt nailed flat. Viti sat at the threshold, plucking at a fishbone, eyes fixed on the road, legs drawn up to his chest. He barely looked up as Sir passed. So slowed, stepped closer. You're not running, are you? Viti shrugged, flicked the bone into the dust. Where would I go out there? Might as well tell the basalt myself. There stood over him, blocking half the sun. Ward'll want everyone for a line, but if too many leave... De melicortsiu, Viti said, not moving. Some like, Canulo, act tough, but none of us have been through a real fight. Sayer pressed his lips together, nodded once. He kept walking. Shadows from eaves cut the path into uneven stripes. Children's voices rose and fell in choked bursts. None sounded playful. Each step drove the point home in his gut. There was no choice, not for anyone village-born, not for those who wanted even the little they had. Murmurs tracked Sir through the middle yards. He passed Lavu's younger siblings crouched around a roped piglet. They didn't laugh or call out. Lavu's mother eyed him as he passed, hands dirty to the wrist, worry clear and open on her face. Sir circled wide, finally drifting toward the main road that cut to the Sarrafin's hut. Brambles dragged at his calves. He ducked to avoid the sun, breathing shallow, moving slow, checking every corner. The sense of something waiting, just out of sight, followed, heavy as a hand pressed to the back of his neck. Ward was not at home. The door stood ajar, letting the smell of old soup and burnt tobacco coil out. Inside, the light angled sharp across the cold ashes in the fire pit. The black sword hung fixed and silent. The etched woman turned slightly into shadow. Ser's own faint reflection stared back at him, older, tired, out of place. Ser drifted from room to room, checking without thinking. The dirt floor for recent prints, the linen chest for supplies, the rack for missing blades. Ward's pipe rested on its side, half filled, as if dropped mid-thought. A cup in the sink held a skin of water, untouched. The little room where Ser slept felt stuffy, the mat still unrolled, blankets still knotted beneath a corner. He left the hut, with that itch of doubt growing. Ward wasn't the type to vanish, not now, not without making noise enough for the entire village to notice. Yet no one shouted, no warning sounded, just the hush and the day's slow crawl. They walked back outside, blinking hard against the sunlight. 2 chickens scratched near the fence. Down the road, Roland leaned against a water barrel, trading worried words with Baloo, who looked twice his usual size, with arms crossed and chin raised. Lavoo appeared last, a spear tucked under his arm, a training spear, too short for real war, but good enough to kill a chicken or scare a goat. He slapped it on his palm and grinned, none of the cheer in his eyes. Roland spoke first when Ser joined them. "Ward missing?" Ser jerked his head. "Gone. Didn't say where." Baloo's lips tightened. "He'll show when it counts." Lavoo waved his stick at the sky. "He's probably up at the fields, checking the hiding spots." "I checked twice," Baloo said, voice flat. "Nobody up there but me and 2 old men counting beans. Ward's not the type to hide." Ser glanced back at his porch. "He's doing something, could be talking with Orc, or gone to check the forest trail." Roland's eyes jumped past Ser, catching something in the distance. "Look." 2 elders walked up the center path, hands clasped before them. Hodea and Ook-Zook. Hook's mouth was already moving as he talked, his eyebrows up, making crisp chopping motions with one hand. Hodea walked slower, carrying a length of red fabric, the warning mark. They stopped in the round square between 2 old wells and waited. People filtered from houses, drawn by the sight of elders out of order. Orc cleared his throat as a few families gathered. "Ward's off the path," he called out. "He's seen to the fields. We hold here, and we prepare. Nobody forces a choice, Ward least of all. If you want to stand, you stand. If you want to flee, watch the trails for sign, but you stay sharp and you stay quiet." Hodea dangled the cloth from his thumb, letting it catch the light. "If you mean to stay, say so. If you run, tell someone. Ward will return before sundown." For a moment, the square buzzed, some muttered, others only watched. One woman called for her son to come close. An old man looked at the ground, refusing the stare of every elder. The red marker twisted in the faint wind. Ser felt the choice bite at him. He knew Ward would expect him to stand, sword or no sword, and maybe that was all that could be done. But as the crowd spread out, drifting in silent groups, he realized most people would stand not because of belief or loyalty, but because no one wanted to be the first to run. He looked at his friends and found blank faces, the same hollow hope, the same worry stamped across every line. Baloo pulled his heel across the road, Lavoo smacked his spear, Roland tried to suck in a breath he couldn't quite finish. Zer stepped toward the elders, voice clear enough for Ook-Zook to hear. "We stay," he said. He felt it settle in the pit of his stomach, heavy and hard. One by one, the others nodded and stood beside him. The red cloth rippled, marking a choice as clear as any line ever drawn in blood or dirt. The light began to fade out of the day, color bleeding away to a heavy grey. Behind the huts, smoke rose in thin strings from evening cookfires, pulled sideways by thin, uneasy wind. Voices climbed and broke, soft in the open yards. The entire village felt huddled up and listening for footsteps, every sound sharp, carried by houses packed close as ribs. Ser and the others drifted off to their homes. No jokes or small talk. Lavu walked the path alone, spear bouncing at his side, head down, boots dragging like a much older man. Roland didn't go home right away. He wandered between his own yard and Serre's, stopping now and then with a look over his shoulder, checking the fields out of old habit. Serre stepped inside the hut, door creaking on its hinge. The black sword caught the little bit of dusk left, silver lines in the blade going flat and dark. He stood at the threshold, letting his eyes run lines over every shape in the main room. Ward still hadn't come back. Serre lit the stub of a candle, watching as the flame bit down small at the wick, then held. He fetched a cup of water and sat on the same rough stool he'd been using since he could walk. He sipped slow, staring at the table, listening to the night press at the windows. Each mouthful seemed to take more effort than the last. Time passed, blurred and uneven. He set down the cup, rubbed his forehead. His eyes drifted to the sword above the mantel, still, sharp, locked in its wood. The face of the woman on the blade was just lines now, no tricks or flickers. Just a dead thing in a dead night, and that felt right. He heard Ward's step before seeing him, boot heel dragging, then a long pause, then the shuffled foot. The door swung open with a jolt. Ward entered, shoulders hunched, shirt damp along the collar, mud stuck to knees. He shook the dirt outside before stepping in, slamming the door behind him, the force enough to rattle the rack above the fire. Serre didn't say anything at first. He waited, reading the set of Ward's face, a map of deep creases, lips thin from being pressed together all day, eyes sharp in the candle's limited glow. Ward dropped a battered sack on the floor and sank into the nearest chair. He worked a splinter from the palm of his hand, not looking at Serre or at anything but the dirty cup by his knee. "Barely come?" he asked, voice little more than a scrape. "Ja," Serre answered. "They'll be back at dawn." Ward nodded once, slow and deliberate. He reached for the old pipe, packed it with shaking hands, and struck a match. Smoke flooded the room, a steady line, no hurry. So wanted to talk, but nothing worthwhile came out. He let the silence drag, listening to the small pop of the cooling fire and the slow suck of breath through Ward's pipe. Finally, Ward spoke. "Nobody ran?" "A few might try," Serre said. "Most said they'd stay. Elders told us not to force it." Ward grunted, pipe snapped against his teeth. "Same fools, different year." He stared at the sword above the mantel, but didn't move toward it. The conversation wore itself thin. Serre sat in the blue dusk, watching Ward in profile, chin tucked tight, a look on his face like every decision was poison, and he was forced to swallow it all. Outside, the noise of day faded, replaced by owls and friction, the slow grind of a village tensed for its end. Serre stood, stretched cracked joints. "I'll eat later," he said, not waiting for Ward's answer. He left the candle burning for Ward and slipped outside. The sky had gone full steel. 2 houses down, Balu's father sat sharpening 2 short knives, the scrape loud across the yard. Serre wandered to the edge of the road, stopping where the village thinned into brush and mud. He squatted, elbows on knees, letting his weight sink until the world steadied. He listened for the river, the night birds, the far-off, almost wishful sound of a boat, but heard nothing but frogs and the faint pulse of his own blood. The cold crept in with the dark. Some part of him boxed up the fear, stowed it in the same old place he kept every ugly memory and unspoken word. The rest of him just waited for morning, for the enemy, for Ward's orders that would come at first light. He stayed that way, still as a stump, until dew gathered on his arms and the world went black. Serre didn't know how long he stayed out by the road. At some point he stood, joints aching, and walked a crooked line back to the house. The fire inside was out. Ward had left the candle burning, its stub halfway gone. The old man's boots were by the door, his shape loose under a ragged blanket on his cot. Light from the stub flickered over the black sword, tracing the curve of the etched woman and the hidden letters, making the blade look stranger than ever. Sarah took a final drink of water, washed his face at the tin basin, and crawled to his mat on the dirt. Sweat chilled on his skin and everything hurt. He pulled the blanket over his chest and listened first to Ward's stuttering snores, then the faint howl of something in the far-off jungle. Sleep scraped him raw, dragged him through bad dreams, the blood rag washing up at his knee, Roland screaming from somewhere black, Ward pressing the black sword into his hands, saying nothing, mouth bleeding red. When he startled awake, the stub had burned to nothing. The only light crept in through the cracks between bamboo slats. He sat, wiped snot from his lip, and listened for any noise that shouldn't be there. Village sounds pressed, faint murmurs, a baby's guttering cry, the scrape of wood, the hush of wind through loose roof thatch. No horns, no drums, no boats. He dressed without thinking. His limbs worked in practiced patterns, tie the cords, slap off the worst dust, dig out a clean cloth, and wipe his face again. He edged into the main room to see Ward already awake, sitting at the table chewing half a hunk of yam, eyes locked on the doorway. Sir poured himself a cup of yesterday's water, drank, then swallowed twice more to clear his throat. He moved to the rack by the fire and felt the weight of every sword, wood and metal. He cupped the hilt of the black sword before pulling his hands away, skin humming as if he'd touched a live snake. Ward grunted upon seeing the gesture. "Not that one," he said. "Not ever." Sir took down a practice blade instead. He felt its balance, swung it through the air. The feeling was off, awkward, not enough heft or length. Ward watched, not saying a word. The silence fell thick between them, not out of malice, just habit and old wounds. Finally, Ward stirred, grabbed his boots, and strapped them on. He turned towards Sir. "You come with me. If there's fighting, you stay behind. If there's talking, you keep your mouth shut unless I nod." Sir nodded. He licked his lips, tasting the grit of sleep and fear, and followed Ward out the door. The chill of morning hit him square. The grass by the well froze, white in streaks, and birds kept to the thick branches. Already, noise traced through the village low. Nervous. Parents warning their kids, men sharpening blades against split wood, one woman stitching a red scrap to her child's sleeve, hands moving too fast. By the communal hall, the rest of the elders had gathered. Hodea looked right through Ser, but Canulo offered a quick nod. Oksak stood by the steps, running his thumb over a smooth stone. Roland, Lavu, Balu, and Viti stood together, all carrying real blades this time, not toys. Ward pulled Sir to the side. "No mistakes," the old man said, voice rough. "Any sign this turns bad, you move. Don't play hero." Zer nodded again and tried not to clench his hands. The air tasted thick, sour, sharp with wood smoke and sweat. Balu flashed a hard smile, as if to say, "Nothing scares me," but he held his blade too high. Lavu shifted from foot to foot, eyes never fixed. Roland spotted Ser and cracked the faintest smile. Down by the river, movement built. The brush parted, and Basalt's boat came 3 new faces this time, another staff in the stern. The morning sun made their armor look redder, their faces harder, nothing like wandering traders. The villagers bunched up behind the elders. Mothers boxed children with their arms. The oldest men leaned together, quiet. Someone coughed, and nobody jumped at the sound. The village pressed together, bodies close, waiting for Ward or someone else to start a story that never had a happy end. The boat slid to shore. Basalt and his men stepped out, boots sucking at the mud of Tuitoma. The stranger didn't bark this time. He planted the staff and waited, measuring the crowd. Ward stepped forward alone. Only old pride kept his shoulders square. His stare met Basalt's. For a moment, the hush was so thick it pressed the river flat, made the distant jungle fall away. Basalt lifted the staff, voice steady and dead. Your answer. Ward didn't look back. We will not join you. Basalt didn't flinch. He lifted the staff higher. Behind him, his men drew knives, blades covered with the black tar of river pitch. The red cloth snapped once in the breeze, then hung dead. The crowd tensed. Blades came up, feet spread and voices caught. Roland's arms shook around the grip of his sword. Lavue let out a tiny gasp before clamping his teeth. Ward watched every twitch. Sarah set his feet as taut. He waited for the first move, something, anything. The air hissed in his chest, and he tasted blood. Basalt gave a single nod. So be it. The first man stepped forward, blades swinging, feet buried up to the ankle in cold black mud. The first clash sounded dull, nothing like the stories, the wet thunk of steel against wood, the grunts of men slipping on mud. Ward met the attacker halfway, blade up, no wasted movement, turning aside a slashing cut and jamming his elbow into the man's chin. Blood sprayed and the man staggered without a sound. Okzuk swung his stick with both hands, cracking bone. Hodea moved slower, heavier, dragging one basalt man by the shoulder and beating him twice with the head of a hoe. Canelo crouched, sticking his old knife into a seam where knee met thigh. The basalt tribesman dropped to one knee, gasping. Canelo finished the job quick, brutal, no words. Zaire watched the fight unfold, feet planted. Ward moved through the line, no shouting, no glory, just short, ugly work. Roland, behind Serre, gripped his blade, breath coming fast. Lavue pressed up behind Hodea, swinging low at an ankle and catching bone with a hard crack. Baloo got tangled by a fourth tribesman's arms. The man reached for Baloo's knife arm. Baloo shrieked and jerked away, then slammed the butt of his blade up into the man's teeth. The tribesman's head snapped back, mouth blooming red. Baloo dropped his knife in the scramble but scrabbled for it, kneeing the man's leg hard. Another attacker came for Sir Older, face painted with red clay streaks, knife notched along the edge. Sir dodged, let the first slice sail past. The man jabbed right, fast Sir felt the blade touch his side, tearing shirt and skin. He swung the practice blade, felt it thud against ribs. The man growled, stumbling forward, knife up, and Sir kicked him straight across the shin. The man folded, grabbing at Sir's legs, getting a boot to the face for his trouble. Ward took another hit, this one across the scalp, drawing sudden blood. He roared, drove his attacker back with wide, lunging swings. The villagers pressed the outsiders hard, bodies bumping and swinging, the only sound the smack of fist to jaw, blade to bone, boots in mud. Basil stood back, watching, eyes flat, waiting for the choice moment. Roland's blade shook in both hands. Viti and Lavue tangled arms, moving as one, knocking a tribesman to his knees with a shared shove. Uksak finally lost his stick. He bit a man's ear hard enough to make him scream, using fists when there was nothing better. Sir felt the raw acid of fear shoot through him as his attacker rose again. The man lunged. Sir twisted, went low, brought the blunt blade up under the man's jaw. The man's head snapped back. He spat blood and charged, but Sir sidestepped, swinging as hard as he could across the man's temple. This time, the man fell and stayed down. The fight pressed up against the water's edge. Mothers shielded children with their bodies. Basalt, realizing the line had held, barked a command. His own men staggered back, two limping, one leaving a red trail behind him. Ward and Canulo stood, front, blood on their faces and arms, eyes never leaving Basalt. "We said no," Ward growled, voice flat and cold. Basalt spat, backing to his boat. "This isn't finished. The fire will come. You cannot stand forever." He dragged his wounded onto the boat and shoved off, oar biting into the shallows. The villagers watched without speaking until the red sail rounded the bend, vanishing from view. The damage showed soon. Blood stained the riverbank. Two men lay groaning with open gashes. A woman rocked a child with a split scalp. Ward pressed his palm to the slice above his brow until the bleeding slowed. Oak Zuck wiped sweat from his jaw and stooped to reclaim his stick. Bent, hands on his knees, gulping hot air. His arms shook from the effort of it, and from the knowledge that this was only the first wave. Roland found Sir, knuckles white on his sword, face streaked with mud and something close to tears. "We're still here," Roland said, his voice hollow. Sir glanced at the rising sun, warm, gold, uncaring. "We made them leave, for now." He wiped at the blood seeping from the cut along his ribs, already stiffening. Around them the villagers pulled wounded men to their feet, checked each body for signs of life or loss. Ward's eyes scanned the faces, always measuring, always counting. No one cheered, no one called it a victory. The work of survival waited on every side, and somewhere downriver, the promise of fire had only just begun. Ser steadied his breath, ready for what would come next. The riverside cleared slow. The last of Basalt's men vanishing around the far bend, the boat's hull dragging in the reeds. A single black feather, maybe from a crow, spooked by the fighting, settled on the mud where the red sail had been. No one trusted enough to move first, not even the oldest men. Ward wiped blood from his hairline, leaving a fresh streak running past his nose. His eyes burned holes in the fading spot on the water. "No one goes in after them," he said. "If they come again, it won't be a warning." Nearby, Hodea hunched to help Lavu tie off the cut on his calf, fingers slick with both mud and blood. Mothers hurried children back behind doors, voices tight, promising food, safety, whatever they could think of. Roland pressed a bundled cloth to a long scrape on Balu's arm. The village stank sharp now, all copper, wood smoke, old sweat and fear. Ter's side throbbed. The cut wasn't deep, but it smarted when he twisted. He pressed his hand to it, charmed it clear, and stood. His legs wobbled. Lavu limped past, dragging a broken spear. A dozen villagers circled up around Ward and Oaksuck. Some argued for chasing the basalts. Some talked of hiding in the fields or up the old ridge. Ward's voice beat all talk down flat. "We hold the line. No running. Gather every able hand. Reinforce the walls. If you've got a blade, carry it. If you haven't, use whatever you can lift." Canulo took a shovel and started digging a fresh pit by the path, prepping for a barricade. Balu's older brother grabbed armfuls of reeds for torch-making. Viti dragged a pile of extra pots, setting them in stacks behind the fish smoker if they needed to block a side door or throw something. They'd have plenty. Ser's hands shook as he started helping. Burlop pressed to his hip. He joined Roland and Lavu behind the hall, stacking rocks and sharpening stakes with a hatchet nicked from Canulo's shed. The work forced breath into him, made the fear smaller by inches. Balu's voice came raw from beside him. "They'll light us up if we don't dig in." "They'll try," Lavu said, jaw clenched. "But Ward won't let us burn easy. Did you see him? Old man moved like a boar." Roland kept quiet, lips white. His hands worked slower than the rest, but he didn't stop. By midday, the barricades spread out from the main path. Wagons flipped, fences upended, barrels half filled with water dragged near every front door. Women crammed the youngest kids inside, kept their own weapons close, sickles, hammers, and one by one, the sturdiest kitchen knives. Sir checked his own house, making sure nothing had been left that could burn fast. Ward swept to the front, carrying the black sword now, the blade half wrapped in oilcloth, but plain enough for anyone to see. Sir nearly asked to carry it, to fight with something that heavy, but the look Ward gave him snapped that thought dead. As the day burned on, the sounds of building and shouting carried out over the terraced fields. Even the birds kept to the far trees, leaving the center of Tuitoma as quiet as a toothless mouth. Balu flopped under the narrow porch outside Ser's hut after hauling wood. "No end to it," he said. "Might as well dig our own graves." Lavu arrived next, fresh bandage around his leg. They'll be back tonight. With more. Sir sat chewing a strip of dried fish, torn between hunger and nerves. Ward's not sleeping. He'll watch until dawn if he has to. Roland shuffled into the shade last, hands stained red from hauling clay. If this is the end, at least we're not running. Lavu's voice came like a stone thrown at a still pond. Would it be so bad to run? I keep thinking about it. What's left if we stay and they burn it flat? Belu picked at his toes. Run where? If not into the basalt, into something worse? Ward's right, this is ours. If we die here. Ser nodded. The words quiet but weighty. We hold, same as the old stories say. Even if no one remembers, we'll say we stood. Their silence fit the late day. The golden light faded to a long, cold blue. Ward's shadow stretched past the window, carrying the weight of both sword and command. He caught Sir's eye and nodded him in. Inside, candles flickered, pressed down by a wall of old shadows. Ward poured water into 2 chipped cups, pushed one at Sir. You're not a child now. Fight if you must. But you listen to me until the end, understand? Sir drew a rough breath, met his uncle's gaze. I will. Ward closed his eyes for a moment, then drew the oilcloth tight around the black sword, set it on the mantel, and sat heavily beside Ser. Outside, a wind picked up, brushing the village with the chill of coming night. They waited, and the village of Tuitoma, battered, bloody, and silent, waited with them. Night took hold fast. Smoke drifted low across the huts, fires kept small and deep inside houses, not a single light showing through a window. The barricades threw misshapen shadows across the lanes. Men stood watch in 2s and 3s, faces blank, gripping tools or old swords. Any voice above a whisper drew hard looks from every dark doorway. Sir sat on the wooden floor near the fire, knees drawn up, back pressed to the cool wall. Ward cleaned the black sword with a length of oiled cloth, his movements methodical, routine, the way a farmer sharpens a spade before planting. Ward said nothing, and Sir didn't ask. There was nothing worth asking. Rain began to fall. It started as a few big drops on the thatch, then poured down steady, a hard, slanting rain that could cover the sounds of boots or even a scream at the edge of the field. Ward picked up a pail and set it beneath the leaky beam above the door. The sound of water hitting tin was sharp and steady. Baloo arrived without warning, slipping through the door, soaked, and shaking mud from his feet onto the mat. Roland's ma sent me, he whispered. Says she saw shapes on the ridge. Ward needs to know. Ward took this in. No flinch, just a nod. Tell Roland's family to stay in. If he's awake, keep him downstairs. Baloo nodded. I'll run. Ward stopped him with a glance. No running tonight. Walk straight and slow. I want everyone seen and counted. Nobody alone. Baloo's face knotted with fatigue. He nodded again, shut the door against the rain. Ward rose and turned to Sir. You come. If something brews at the ridge, I want your eyes with mine. He pointed at the rack. Take a real blade. The steel from the rack felt heavier than Ser remembered. He strapped it tight and pulled on his cloak, the fabric thin, but better than nothing under the rain. Ward opened the door, squinting through the downpour, setting one slow foot after another. Outside, water streamed across the path, lifting the scent of clay and rot. The houses glowed faint with yellow light through thick curtains. Ser could see figures drifting behind rain-streaked glass, every one of them holding shadows longer and thinner than their bodies. Ward led him past the well, where Lavu and Viti crouched under an awning, both clutching unlit torches and biting their lips. Stay sharp, Ward grunted. Don't light anything. Labu nodded, shaking water from his fringe. Vithi looked past Ward, staring at the darkness like he could see through it. They reached the edge of the ridge, where the field sloped down to the next village. Ward stared into the gloom, shoulders hunched, breath coming slow from his nose. Sir strained to see through the rain. For a moment, he saw nothing, just the broken ground, slick with water, and the black teeth of burned old fence posts. Then there it was, movement. 3 shapes, hunkered low by a fallen log, heads tilted toward the village. Sir slid his hand to the hilt of his blade. Ward lifted an arm to signal, wait. The shapes stayed put, maybe talking. One stood slowly, speaking to the others. The voice carried weird in the wet air, certainly not Tomasi. Ward motioned Sir back. They crept through the undergrowth. Dirt clinging to knees, thorns raking their cloaks. Neither spoke. Each step pulled water into their boots, made the shiver in Sir's bones set in deeper. After 10 long minutes circling, they came close enough to hear scraps of words. The language was basalt, broken and harsh, but neither Ward nor Sir needed words to read the plan. The shapes fanned out, checking the edge of Tuitoma, staying close to the brush, scanning for places in the barricade. Ward's face went hard. He waved Sir home. Wake Bolu, Lavu, and Hodea. Tell Oak to ring the bell if he sees flames. I'm staying to count numbers. Sir left quick, feet slapping mud, lungs burning hot under the bite of rain. At every fence line he peeled off to another door, rapping quick. Lavu and Balu met him at the main lane, torches in hand but still unlit. They spread the news quietly, sharp, basalts on the ridge. Ward said wait for attack but stay ready. Hodea's shadow filled the doorway, Ward out there alone. Counting their numbers, Sir said. Let him, Hodea said tight. If they light the field, we ring the bell and everyone fights. They pressed together under an awning, rain washing the blood from earlier from the ground, leaving only the torn earth and flattened grass. For long minutes, nothing moved but the yellow smears of wet light behind closed curtains. A dog barked near Vitti's house, sharp and then cut off. Someone screamed a short, abrupt sound, and then nothing. The sound of the rain grew louder, rolling down in sheets. Ward's outline appeared at the edge of the lane, body hunched forward, blade out. He moved quick for his size, never running, but never slow. Ducking into shadows, checking every way in. Behind him, more shapes crept. Basalt scouts, pressed low against the ground. He called out, sharp as a whip, now. Ukzuk swung the bell, the sound cutting through the downpour, metal on metal, cold and jagged, echoing down every lane. Doors flew open, villagers poured out, holding whatever they could swing. Flames flared as Balu, Lavu, and 2 others lit torches and tossed them to the dirt in case the basalt tried to cross the mud and take Tuitoma's heart. Everything went quick and dirty in the dark. Basalt men surged from the brush, dropping silent and hard against the barricades. Sir swung his blade at the first shadow that jumped the fence, feeling the jolt as metal hit bone. Screams and curses twisted up. Ward stood in their center, black sword in hand, moving like a wall between Tuitoma and fire. Sir felt mud slide under his feet, rain and blood mixing, the sound of bodies hitting dirt, the sharp tang of Ward's orders giving nobody a chance to do anything but survive. The fight pressed into the village, the bell wild above their heads, everyone standing or falling in the same filthy patch of rain-soaked ground. Please, Sir lost sense of time in the chaos, every second blurred flash of torch, scream, the slick push and drag of bodies in the mud. Ward broke a path through the attackers, swinging the black sword, each blow buying feet of ground, the edge leaving dark wounds that hissed under the rain. Orkzuk fought at Sir's side, club in both fists, knocking down a man who rolled and clawed straight back up. Vitti let out a sharp yell, vanished in the crush, then reappeared with blood spraying from his nose, swinging a hoe. Roland clung to Sir's shoulder for a breath, face white and eyes too big, a kitchen knife shaking in his fist. A basalt tribesman lunged for them, Ser drove the point of his sword into the man's thigh, felt the snap of tendon, saw him crumple. Roland gagged and turned away, wiping rain and snot from his chin. Ser had no words, only forced him back behind an overturned cart. Lavvu stumbled by, limping, his spear broken, lashing out with the jagged end. He shoved a basalt man away, just as Balu dragged another off a fence by both ankles, knees pressing mud until the man stopped moving. The basalt notched a torch and flung it into a pile of brush by a wall, fire licking fast up the dry grass. Hodaya Pluvia dashed over, kicked the flames with both feet, and threw buckets, shoving a boy after another, faces smudged and bleeding, lines tight with panic. Ser glanced down the lane. Ward still fought, shoulders hunched, the black sword flashing in short, merciless arcs. For an instant, a basalt tribesman met Ward head-on and tried to grab the blade with both hands. Ward didn't slow. He drove the hilt into the man's jaw, snapped his head back and cut him down. The barricade behind them sagged. 3 basalt men pressed through, knives wide, grins showing teeth. Roland cowered, then jabbed blindly, caught one in the hip. Lavvu and Balu charged, clubbing and kicking until 2 backed off, one limping, one crawling. The third left crumpled. Rain came harder, steam billowing where fire caught wet grass. Ser fought back a man twice his age and size, got knocked to one knee, losing his grip on the blade. The man swung down but slipped. Ser darted up, grabbed a rock, smashed it against temple and jaw. The man slumped, half in the mud, groaning. Smoke cut through the rain, thick and sour, but the fires faded as the torrents drowned them. The basalt numbers thinned, bodies down, others fleeing, one slipping away between houses. Ward shouted, "Hold them! Don't leave the lines!" The villagers, teeth bared and arms slick with mud and blood, pressed forward. Oak rang the bell with both arms, calling the remaining defenders together. Lavvu slumped against the well, pressing a rag to his side, teeth clenched, legs shaking, but refusing to go down. The fighting didn't last much longer. A last rush by 3 basalt men turned to panic as Ward charged, the black sword cutting an arc of rain and light. The strangers broke, sprinted back through the broken gaps in Tuitoma's defenses, leaving behind weapons, shoes, and 2 of their own. Ser stood breathing hard, chest burning, his blade lost, mouth slick with blood that wasn't all his. Rain stung his eyes, only now letting him feel the scrapes along his ribs and the bite in his thigh. From every direction came the scrape of boots and the shuffle of bodies, some crying, some groaning. Ward paced to the center, chest heaving, blood streaked across chin and brow, eyes raked the village, no smile, no relief. People came out slow, torches guttering, silence gripping them heavier than fear. Canulo cursed as he checked the wounded, tearing strips from his own shirt for bandages. Hodea's wife cradled her daughter under the awning, rocking her by the sound of fading battle and rain. Balu wiped mud from his eyes, counted his friends, then spat red, limped to Ser and Roland. Ward finally spoke, voice loud enough for all. "Get the hurt inside. Leave the dead for now. Any basalt that moves, tie up in the storehouse. Count us, all of us." The crowd did as told, without complaint or question. The storm eased, fire down to smolder in the ash piles, torches guttering on thresholds, smoke trailing low. The village had held, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like the last breath of something stubborn, half-killed, still too hard to die. Ser leaned against the well, breath slowing, body hurting everywhere. Roland pressed a hand to Ser's back, quiet. Lavvu grinned, lips split, blood on teeth. "Still here," Lavvu croaked. "Still here," Ser agreed, and pushed himself up, waiting for Ward to say what came next. Dawn arrived muffled, the rain spent, the sky a dreary wash. Tuitoma's paths ran thick with mud, pools glinting between prints, blood spreading thin where rain hadn't swept it clean. Smoke drifted from a few cold fire rings, rising crooked into the mist. Survivors moved slow, silent. They carried bodies, basalt dead first, then any villager who hadn't made it through the night, laying them in rows by the well. Sarr helped with the worst work. He gripped ankles slick with mud, teeth clenched, back and arms aching with effort. Roland hauled stones to weigh down a canvas over the dead. Lavoo limped, head bandaged, eyes ringed red from smoke and lack of sleep, but his hands kept steady as he tied wounds and righted what was left to right. Inside the communal hall, Ukzuk doled out rations and measured water 1 cup at a time. Hodea argued with Canulo by the door, voices low, fighting over when and where to bury the bodies. Balu's mother brought herbs and rags, tending to a woman with a broken hand, setting bones with the cool patience of someone who had done this many times with livestock. Ward sat by the window, sword across his knees, unmoving, eyes sinking into the fog. He watched the yard, the barricade sagging, the lines drawn in mud and ash. Now and then he blinked, jaw tightening every time the village's hurt rose up a notch. Someone crying for a brother, a girl refusing to leave the side of a lost friend. So dropped the last canvas to the side of the trail, straightening up, sweat and rain running together down his face. For a minute he just stood, breath coming ragged, eyes glazed by fatigue. When he finally moved, it was through a world so much quieter than the night before. Every footfall loud, every whisper easy to track. He met the others by the well. Roland tried and failed to smile, face drawn hollow by the hours. Balu rolled a pebble beneath his boot, saying nothing. Lavoo bent forward, spat a clot of blood, and grimaced. "They'll have to try harder next time," Balu said after a while, words barely above the croak of a frog. Lavoo picked at a scab on his wrist. "If there is a next time. Maybe they'll find easier pickings. Never seen Ward move like that. Never seen him take a cut and not even notice." Sarr appeared at the crowd clustering by the communal hall. At Ward, hunched alone with his sword, a man drained near empty. "He'll stand as long as there's anyone to stand for, even if it's just himself." Roland's voice came thin. "We're not leaving, not after this." Balu spat. "No! They can burn every hut to the ground, and we'll still be here." Around them, men and women dragged logs to fortify the main path, patched holes in walls with reed and mud, knotted new rope for nets and wounds both. No one boasted, no one cheered or named the night a victory. They just worked, because nothing else made sense. By afternoon, the rain gave up, letting a weak line of sunlight crawl down the center of Tuitoma. Some hope flickered soft, thin as kids' laughter, but everyone knew better than to relax. The youngest children crept out, poking fingers into puddles, poking the basalt bodies the way they might a dead fish on the bank. Ward finally stood, pulling himself up slow. The black sword slid into its wrappings, hidden again, out of reach. He limped to the square, passing the well. Each villager paused in their work, watching him with the same guarded caution as they gave a wild dog. Ward said nothing at first. Then, as he met each set of eyes, he nodded. "It's done," he said. "Today we dig. Tonight we watch. Tomorrow we'll see." He pressed the sword tighter to his chest. With that, he turned away, dragging his shadow behind him. Sarr met Ward's stare for one heartbeat as the old man left. He didn't look away. "Behind, sir," Lavoo's laugh rasped out, half broken but not all gone. "Still here, all of us." Sarr let the words settle. The work called again, and he answered, folding himself into the wary, stubborn rhythm of a village that might just outlast the next rain. The rest of the day blurred into work and silence. The air hung thick, smells of earth and burnt reeds and blood never leaving. The youngest children circled the well, dared each other to inch closer to the rows of covered bodies, then sprinted away giggling. until one mother hissed at them to stay clear. Old men with shovels measured grave plots and traded few words. Women broke apart the barricade, carrying back anything not soaked through or ruined, rebuilding what little could be saved. Dowel axes chopped for hours. Nobody let their hands go idle. Sir spent the afternoon shoving mud against one wall of the Sarrafin's house, plugging gaps left by knives and fire. Balu helped, pressing in river sod, grumbling how his own place might as well be kindling. That evening, when the sun sagged low and turned the sky to brass, Roland brought a battered basket from his mother, 1 yam, 2 wrinkled apples, a fat chunk of old cheese. Sir broke it into thirds, and they ate, sitting in the dirt, chewing slow. Lavu slumped beside them, eating with bloody fingers, legs stretched and shaking. Ward didn't come home for supper. From the doorway, Sir watched his uncle move from house to house, checking on every hurt, trading nods or a brief word, touching shoulders or heads in that silent way that passed for kindness when you'd run out of everything else to give. When Ward returned, it was for the pipe and to splash cold water on his face. He said nothing to Sir, and Sir returned the favour. The night came cold and wet again. The men stood watch, this time with torches burning all night, fires hidden low so no one could see them from the ridge. No one slept well. Sir rolled on his mat, listening to the groans and shifting blankets in neighbouring huts, the coughs that cut the night. Somewhere near midnight, a baby cried, long and inconsolably. Then silence fell thick. Before dawn, Sir woke. His head throbbed, his cut rib smarted. He dressed slow, picked through the kitchen for the last crumbs of bread, and slipped outside. Ward was already at the well, hands wrapped around a steaming cup, jaw set, eyes on the horizon where fog drifted up from the river. For a while, Sir stood beside him, neither talking, breathing in the taste of smoke and dew, the world barely coloured into day. How much time passed, Sir didn't know. Only that when the sun forced itself above the jungle line, the night's dread seemed smaller. The village made its noises, a cough, an axe on a stump, the shush of feet on wet grass. Lives rebooted. Roland and Lervu emerged, bruises already going green, voices scratchy but not broken. Balu trailed behind, dragging a clean shirt and an attitude, but he grinned when he saw Sir hard and fast, a flash of old mischief that didn't last 2 steps. Over the next hours, they filled the old burial pit, sewed up the worst wounds, burned the last of the ruined fence. The basalt dead were left outside the walls, stripped of anything useful, then dragged across the path and left for whatever would take them. Ward watched it all, unmoving, arms folded, the black sword never far. After everything was tidied, all the work bled out. The village collected at the square for a final, wordless count. No speeches, no stories, just the elders standing together, tired faces drawn, every eye on Ward. Ward looked at the row of survivors, his mouth dry and hands clamped tight. He raised the sword, not in command, but because it was his and always would be. "Tuitoma holds," he said, no shout, no drama. And that was all. Ser stood at the back with his friends, mud still smeared on his skin, arms aching, head hollowed out. Balu cursed under his breath. Roland squeezed Ser's wrist just once, then let go. Lavu stood with both fists jammed in his pockets, eyes on the dirt. When it was done, everyone drifted away, back to broken homes, back to beds that would not bring rest. Ward leaned on his sword, shoulders sagging. Sir wanted to say something, anything that might ease that look, but nothing felt true. So he walked back, slow, feeling every cut and bruise sing in his body, and let the weight of what they'd survived press down until survive was all that mattered. Night came again, and even though every shadow looked like an enemy, even though the fences would never be enough, Sir crawled beneath his blanket, shut his eyes, and waited for dreams darker than any jungle night.
Thank you for listening to Stellar Shock, our immersive audiobook podcast. If you're enjoying the adventure and wish to support us further, please consider joining our Patreon community at patreon.com/vertical. That's patreon.com/VERTICLE. This episode of Stellar Shock is a production of Vertical Media, LLC, all rights reserved. Produced and edited by our talented team here at Vertical. The fabulous theme music was created exclusively for Stellar Shock and is used with permission.
Vertical Media. Sore must be the storm.